I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time.
Welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I'm honored. It is not even quite the word that I am, how I feel about bringing to you powerful women, extraordinary women who are change makers, who are people who have stepped into their own personal power and are dedicated to supporting others to do the same. So we do these every week, and we're on all the platforms: Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, Amazon, video on YouTube. So you look for Women Awakening with Cynthia James. And you can also go to cynthiajames.net. There's a lot of stuff there, things that I'm doing, gifts for you, and you can join my private community. Today, I get to introduce you to someone who
Mhm.
I've known for a long time. I consider her friend, and I'm excited about the work she does in the world. Her name is Angela Sasseville. She's been empowering high achieving professionals, entrepreneurs, and executives since she founded Flourish 19 years ago. She works with leaders individually or with the senior leadership teams to assist them in achieving greater effectiveness in their roles. And her hybrid experience as a licensed psychotherapist, a business leader, and an executive coach allows her to tend and lend expertise to her clients' psychological and professional challenges. Angela, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Well, thank you for having me, Cynthia. I so appreciate your enthusiasm.
Well, audience, I've known Angela for a lot of years and watched her evolution, and it's been extraordinary. But I want to start with how you grew up. You know, a lot of people think
Sure.
that successful people just sort of drop into it, and there's an evolution for all of us. So, how did you grow up?
Yeah, well, I am very much a city girl, which then surprises people to find out that I grew up on farmland here in Colorado, inside of a very stoic family of German Americans. And my family was full of love, full of consistency, and they could not express emotion or talk about feelings to save their soul. And there are, a myriad of points in my childhood that I could point to um, where that was the case. And I just had this awareness that it was making things harder, their inability to talk to each other and be forthcoming and sit in the emotions with each other. And so that's really what kind of sparked my initial interest in psychology, was watching them struggle as a teenager and just thinking, I don't have the language for this and I don't have the tools for this, but there just has to be a better way.
Yeah, do you consider yourself a high expressive?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, how
Uh,
was that being in a field of non expressives?
Sometimes it felt suffocating. It was really stifling. There was a pivotal moment when I was 16 years old. My grandmother had struggled with breast cancer and her cancer came back. And so I remember being in my grandparents' house when she was passing away, and the whole family gathered, and the whole family loved her. And not a single soul said a single word to a single other soul. And that's when I thought, okay, I got to look into this because there's just got to be a better way. We were all hurting and we just lacked the tools to connect with one another in that moment of pain.
You know, it's so interesting because I grew up in a family too where there was a lot of struggle, but the ability to express feelings and emotions, it was just a no-no. And I too thought, what is up with this? I mean, and there were a lot of secrets. I don't know if there were secrets in your family, but there were a lot of secrets in mine. And it was like, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Yeah,
S-
exactly.
So talk to me. about you becoming a therapist, because there was stuff going on in your world when you when you went to school.
There was there was a lot of there was a lot of stuff going on. I once upon a time had a job in corporate America, and I was pregnant with my first child, and I had a growing awareness that my job in corporate America was not enough for me. It was empty, it was hollow. I needed something more, especially if I was going to be away from my newborn child after she was born. I needed it to be more purpose filled. And so the universe intervened and took that job away 10 days after I gave birth to her. And long story short, a series of events led me to graduate school while she was an infant, because I needed that meaningful, purpose filled work in my life, especially if I was going to spend time away from my baby girl to do it.
Yeah. And so you get this degree, and you're married and you have a child. Can you talk to me about what was the impetus for creating Flourish?
Mm, I am a firm believer in our desire to self actualize. And self actualization, we would define as living to our fullest potential and seeking our fullest level of fulfillment. And we go after self actualization kind of in a stair step manner. So we get there and we might plateau for a while, but then something starts calling us again and something starts pulling us higher. And it's time to take another step up and to grow another step further. And that's, how and why I chose the name Flourish for the practice over 19 years ago when I founded the practice.
Yeah, and I want to talk about evolution and leadership, because
Mm,
when you start an organization and you become an entrepreneur, there's a lot of vision, there's a lot of dreams, there's a lot of hopes, and then there's also sometimes reality. So let's talk about, you're starting this, and the realizations that you had as someone who was an entrepreneur and owner of a company that employed
hmm
people.
hmm Sure. So, what realizations have I had? Well, it's been a long journey. It's been almost 20 years now. And I would say that my growth has shown up in different levels at different times. Um, when I think about women in leadership, one of the things that I think becomes most apparent to me is how much we all need authenticity and how much and I'll include myself in this, we need those safe spaces for authentic dialogues. Because I think women who hold leadership positions are forced to mask so much of the day, are forced to show up with strength and resiliency even on days that they're not feeling so strong, are forced to show up in their professionalism even on days where there's something tender going on with a loved one. And I think all of those hours that they spend in that masking needs an antidote. And when we can find women that are safe and we know we can drop into that authentic dialogue, I think that's the relief that we need from all of the hours of masking.
Yeah, it's important, and I'm going to come back to this point, but I want to talk about, because as a leader and owner of a
Mm-hmm.
company and having a team, I witnessed you working quite diligently to build a team.
Yeah.
And I want to know what was the good news and what was the interesting news about that.
Mm. Yeah. So I had a team that I employed for about 15, 16 years. And, it really sparked my passion for leadership development. I loved learning and studying and developing my own leadership skills and growing in that space. I also became highly skilled at it. And I took incredible joy at setting the culture in my company and maintaining the culture and stitching together a cohesive team dynamic. So I would say that that is the good news. And I have now transferred that joy to the work that I get to do for my clients, for senior leaders who need to shift things in their senior leadership teams. I get to go stitch together the same kind of synergy. It's just now for other people's teams instead of my own, because I no longer have that team. I would say the interesting news is I think as women in leadership, we can take on too much of other people's stuff. And, sometimes we can feel like that frog in that hot pot of water where it's getting a little bit hotter, but just a little bit every day. And we don't track the gradual increase of the problem. We lose sight of it. And then we can easily end up towing too much weight when our team is not giving us enough lift, when other people are not delivering the type of accountability that they need to be delivering.
Yeah. So, so I happen to have been in your life for a long time, and I
Yeah.
would like to talk about transition.
Okay.
Because when you've got this business and this team and you've been functioning for these 15 years and things are in the flow and then there's an awareness that something else is calling you because you mentioned that something else
Mm-hmm.
calls you. So I want to
Mm-hmm.
talk about the process of transition because it's not just you wake up one day and go, oh, now I'm going to do this and I'm going to not do this and everything's going to be great. So let's talk
Yeah.
about that process for you because I think the women who are listening, a lot of women in this moment are feeling in transition. And it's like,
Mm.
how do I let go of this? And how do I step into this that's my passion for this moment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, transition can be terrifying. And I speak from personal experience when I say that. So I think a lot of us experience self actualization as that still quiet voice that keeps tapping us on the shoulder. For me, it started in 2020 and it said, I am so burnt out on being an employer. There's got to be another way. We got to go do something else. This doesn't give us joy anymore. And I think I ignored it for a lot of time. I tried to problem solve it. I tried some things that didn't work. And I think a lot of us are afraid to really slow down and listen to that voice and acknowledge that we might need a transition because I think it terrifies us. Um, for me, it was definitely tied up in my sources of income. Being an employer was one of the ways that I made money for myself, but also it was really tied up in my identity and who I was in the world. And yet, there's a brilliant leadership expert by the name of Bobby Anderson who has taught me that we all have to flirt with these two polar dynamics when a transition is involved. We all want to be safe, but we all also want greatness. And sometimes when it's time to transition, we just need to let this pendulum swing towards greatness and stop clinging so desperately to the safety. We don't have to. We don't have to do anything wild or reckless, but we do need to recognize that sometimes we need to prioritize. What is more important right now for me to be safe or for me to pursue greatness? And for me personally, I knew that there weren't enough hours in the week for me to self actualize and pursue more greatness for myself professionally, so long as I played it safe and I remained an employer to those people.
Yeah, and it was a beautiful thing to witness. And I want to say there are feelings and emotions that come along with any transition, whether it's personal or professional. And
Yes.
you have to just step into that energy called change and the unknown. So I want to talk about this because as this is evolving, you are also married, you are also a mother, and your children are growing. And
Mhm.
how do you find the balance? Because you have a busy life and you have high profile clients. How do you find the balance there?
Mm, how do I find the balance? I think I, after 23 years of motherhood, I don't know that I have that mastered yet, Cynthia. I would say it looked different at every chapter of my daughter's lives. And for any working mothers out there who might be listening to us, I would really encourage you to think about where you are in motherhood as one chapter. You do not have to have the answers for the next chapter. You just have to figure out what do you need in this chapter. And so, of course, as the kids got older, it did create more spaciousness for me to really amplify my work and really hit the gas pedal on what I want to do professionally. Um, but again, it really it changed depending on where the kids were and what they needed from me at the time.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is important. I'm going to call it a balance beam
Yeah.
where it's like you are nurturing and caring for the family that you have created, but at the same time you are nurturing and caring for yourself and birthing what wants to come through you. So
Hmm.
here you've been this entrepreneur with this staff for all these years, and now you're going to be solo.
Hmm.
Did you know how to do that, or did you have to like discover as you went?
It felt very discombobulating. I felt like I was taking off layers and layers and layers of the old me for months. Um, and then finally, I reached a point in time where I felt like I was starting to apply new layers of the new me. And that process, uh, you know, played out over a series of months. Um, so it was definitely uncomfortable and exhilarating at the same time.
Yeah, it's really interesting because in my own life, for the last several months, I have felt like I've been in some kind of void. I know something's coming, and I know I left
Hmm.
something, but I'm in this other place, and it's like I can't push the river. I can't force it. I have to be with it. And so, can we talk just a little bit about learning to be with yourself in uncertainty?
Oof. Do we have to? I have been there in that place for the last 60 days. I kid you not. Um, there are things going on in the world and things going on in the economic market that had stirred up some uncertainty for my business. And like you said, you cannot push the river. Sometimes you can just tell, you intuitively know that something is shifting out there. And, whether you like it or not, you have to accept it. What I have done during that period is gotten really quiet and really gone deep and into meditation and working with my own therapist and my own healers in really synthesizing what do I want? What is it that I have? What are the dreams and hopes that I still have trapped inside of me that I need to release and let out into this world? And so during those times of uncertainty, I like to use the time well. I like to use it significantly and and not allow I think oftentimes the anxiety likes to take over when things are uncertain in our world. And I wanted to be the one who was making conscious choices and deciding what direction to point my boat in.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying because this is what I've learned. You can have faith that your future is going to unfold and that your passion will be delivered and at the same time be an uncertainty. They can be in the same field. And I love that you
Absolutely.
said that you go to your therapist and the people that support you. Ladies, healers need healers, teachers need teachers, coaches need coaches, therapists need therapists. You do not have to do this alone. Was there ever a time that you thought that you might have to walk some of these paths alone? And how did you maneuver that or manage it?
That's interesting. That word alone really rings in my ears. Yes and no. So here's the truth about my adult life that a lot of people don't know. My friendships and people that I rub elbows with on a daily basis have been very sparse at some points in my adult life. Sparse enough that it's been very hard, sparse enough that sometimes I feel lonely. And so there are a lot of days that I have had to learn to walk alone. And as an extrovert who worked with a team for 15 years, that was one of the hardest adjustments for me to make, quite honestly. But I am never alone. So, as Cynthia is well aware, because she's one of these people in my life, I always have a small collection of deep, soulful friends. And I have been blessed with them. And I may not see those people more than a couple of times a year. They're often not people that I get to, share a meal with on a regular basis, but they are always there for me to lean into when I need them. And I do. I lean into them because I do need them.
I so love that. I learned this many years ago. You need a tribe. You need a
Yeah.
group of people that are not yes people, that are not going to co-sign your stuff, but are people that believe in you, want to nurture you, want to lift you, want to support you.
Yeah.
And it has been beautiful to watch you mm, be with that group of people, lean into that group of people, and be a part of other people's groups that nurture and support them. So I
Yeah.
want to know, how do people find you and your fabulous work?
Sure. Flourish Executive Counseling and Coaching can be found pretty easily on Google or at flourishcounseling.com.
Yeah. And so I asked the same last question of every guest, but I want to be a little more specific with you. The show is called Women Awakening. What do
Mhm.
you think is the most important thing for women leaders awakening in this moment?
Mm. I think it's vitally important that all women awakening in this moment listen to that small, still, persistent voice that keeps whispering in the back of their minds and give it some credence. That voice is trying to get our attention so very often. Uh, in the workspace, it frequently tells us, I can't keep doing this the way that I've been doing it. I am depleting myself and this is unsustainable. Or sometimes in our personal lives, it's trying to tell us that I really need one of my loved ones to show up in a very different way for me. That voice is always there for our good if we will be bold enough to start listening to it and to start just accepting that there may be some need for some type of a change, some type of a tweak in our world. And we get to decide how subtle or grandiose that we will be in those changes. That's up to us. But just being honest with ourselves, I think, is that first very important step to self-awakening.
Thank you so much. Couldn't have said it better.
It's so
Angela,
great to be here.
I'm so honored to be your friend, to witness your growth and expansion and your evolution, and to bring your powerful wisdom to this group.
Thank you for having me, Cynthia, and thank you for being such a light to so many women on this planet.
Okay, ladies, I close this show the same way. Same message, different words. What if you were able to pause long enough to tap into that intuitive knowing and to hear that still small voice that she spoke of? What if you could do that? And we're so aware that the possibilities are infinite. The potential for your life is infinite. I'm just going to invite you in this moment to say yes to your life, to your inner voice, to your intuitive knowing, because the world needs your gifts and your heart. Thank you so much for being with me. I love you, and I will see you next time.